Kids need wholesome snacks to fuel their bodies and imaginations, like the delicious soft-bake organic Cliff Kid Z-Bar. With 10 grams of whole grains, it was made for active kids like mine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm on stopwatch duty for the backyard obstacle course. Grab a box of Cliff Kid Z-Bar snacks for playtime anytime.
Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 112 called Amber. I'm so thrilled to tell you guys about today's sponsor, Extend Fertility. Extend Fertility was founded on the premise that democratizing egg freezing could ultimately change the fertility industry and deliver better results. Their co-founder, Dr. Joshua Klein, was actually my doctor, and as you may have heard me say when I interviewed him in episode 36 of this podcast, he's brilliant and supportive and overall awesome. Dr. Klein observed that IVF's success rate was low for women over 40, and its high cost was disappointing for doctors and patients alike. Dr. Klein saw the opportunity to help women think more proactively about their fertility. He believed that if more women could access their younger eggs during the IVF process, more women would see successful outcomes. He founded Extend Fertility, which began offering egg freezing at 40% below the national average cost. By 2017, they were the largest egg freezing practice in the nation, and today, they've expanded to offer a full range of infertility services, including IVF in a small practice environment that is more personal, higher quality, and data-driven. To make an appointment or to see more, go to extendfertility.com and tell them Infertile AF sent you. Thanks, Extend.
Hey everybody, my name is Sunny, host of the weekly live digital talk show and podcast, We Gotta Talk. If you love a deep dive, getting down and dirty, really digging in on topics that inform, inspire, and entertain, this is the show for you. Here's just a snippet of what we talk about every single week.
For me, it's just, are you an asshole? Are you an asshole? Is your kid an asshole? And that's really all it is.
If I see one more blogger talk about celery juice, maybe it's because I'm not a fan. Is this actually cleansing our systems? Is this a yay or a nay?
I'm going to lean towards yay on this one in that it's healthy.
Tell your body it's safe to breathe. It's safe to feel and kind of push yourself to fill your lungs while feeling the support and the safety of the earth.
Honestly, I'm like near tears right now, Stevie. Like even hearing you say, like, tell your body it's okay. Like we've been holding on to so much.
Where do you see most women getting it wrong when it comes to understanding themselves and therefore having a better sex life?
What women get wrong is that they don't understand the way their bodies work.
There are no rules in fashion, and that's what I love about it. If somebody tells you not to put too many accessories on or don't wear this color or whatever, do you?
Come for the info, stay for the laughs. It is always a blast on We Gotta Talk, and I hope to see you. Tune in every Wednesday to watch live on Facebook.com/We Gotta Talk and listen to new episodes every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, guys, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Amber Bailey, who you might know from Instagram as Will Hike for Donuts, is one of the first people I connected with when I started my podcast. She is an OG listener. She's become a great friend. She's also a member of Fertility Rally. And today she's going to tell us all about her roller coaster of a journey. She is pregnant with her first baby right now. She is about 35 weeks along. We recorded this about a month ago, so she'll mention that she's 31 weeks, but now she's closer, and she's just an amazing, incredible woman, and also an environmental scientist, so she's got a lot going on. Amber, I love you so much. Thank you for being on my podcast, your very first podcast interview, so I'm glad you reached out and wanted to do this. Without further ado, this is Amber's infertility story. Amber, my goodness, I've been wanting to talk to you for so long. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
We met through Instagram, basically, right?
Yes, we did.
I remember following your story when I first launched my podcast, and then you joined Fertility Rally. So we've really gotten to know each other but I don't get to talk to you nearly enough. So I'm so glad that we're doing this today. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. When I started my fertility journey, you were actually the first podcast that I listened to.
Whoa.
And like helped me through my entire fertility journey. It was amazing.
Good. I'm so glad. And we should say this is your first podcast.
It is my first podcast.
Thank you for doing it. I feel honored.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Of course. Of course. Okay. So tell me, let's start with you just personally. Were you always maternal or did you always want to have kids?
Oh, absolutely. When I was a kid, I would babysit for everyone in my neighborhood. First of all, I wanted the money. I wanted to buy my own things. And then I was actually talking to my husband last night, and it's funny. I was babysitting like 6-month-old kids at age like 12.
Really?
Which is like, what parent? I sure as hell wouldn't give my newborn to a 12-year-old. But
right. Were they home or would they like actually leave?
They would leave.
Okay.
Yeah, they would leave. And I remember one family I babysat for. There was a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old. And I remember making cookies for the 3-year-old and I told him, okay, don't touch the hot stove. And of course he touched the hot stove. And
oh no.
Yeah. I had to call the mom and I was like, I'm so sorry. And
did he burn himself?
He did.
Oh God.
I took care of him though,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I have younger siblings. I've always been very maternal, always knew that I've always wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
That has been, I just dreamed of the day I could be with my husband and my kids. And I wanted 2 kids and a husband and 3 dogs. And so far I have the husband, the 3 dogs, and 1 on the way. So,
right. So yes, we'll tell the end of the story is that you are pregnant right now. So, which is so awesome, but it was a very long road to get there. So let's start with that part of the story. So when did you and your husband start to try? And did you know right away that you were going to have problems or like what happened?
Well, so we got married in 2013. We met in 2011. And I remember like early on, like, I think it was like the second date, I asked him, okay, do you want kids? And he's like, yeah, I do. I'm like, okay, cool. So I can be with you. And it was like our second date. Mm-hmm. And I was only like 21 at the time. So, I know I was so young and I knew I wanted kids and I didn't want to mess around with any guys who didn't want them in the future. So set that boundary right off the bat. We fell in love like pretty much immediately. And then in 2013, we got married and it was amazing. And
where did you get married?
We got married on Lopez Island in Washington. So there are like some really beautiful islands. His parents live up there. It was magical. It was the most beautiful wedding. And we just decided to travel and do our own thing for about 5 years. Mm-hmm. I focused on my career. I'm an environmental scientist. So I really
have the coolest job.
I do. I really love it.
What does that mean exactly for people who don't know, including me?
So I'm a stormwater compliance scientist. So I go and I work on industrial sites and I help facilities get into compliance with Washington stormwater laws. I work with hazardous waste. I work with like tanks and barges and all the things.
So what do you study to get into that line of work?
Environmental science.
Environmental science. Okay. That makes sense.
Which is also something that I always knew I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I was in high school and took an environmental science class and just knew that I wanted to be an environmental scientist. So I've always, and this actually plays into infertility, is like I always knew what I wanted and how I was going to get it, and very type A, and everything always went to plan for me. And this infertility journey went to shit for me. So
yes, it's so crazy that like, I feel like a lot of our members are saying that, it's a lot of type A people who I guess seek out support and join these support groups. So that makes sense.
Yes.
But it's people who are used to having big ambitions, going after what they want and getting it. We have a lot of successful people who are successful in their careers and other areas of their life. But this infertility thing, you just can't fucking control it.
You can't at all. It's such a mind fuck.
Yes.
Really, really, harmed my mental health. So we'll get into that. But
yeah, for sure.
So 2018, we started trying for a baby. And basically, I was like ready. I had the basal body temperature stuff going on. I had the OPKs on the ready. Basically, as soon as my husband was like, okay, let's start trying, I was like, boy, I got everything lined up, ready to go. We're ready to have a kid. We're going to get pregnant this month. And that didn't happen. Okay. I was devastated. And I remember going on a trip at the end of the month, and, it was the day that my period was due. And I was just waiting around to see if it would start. And of course it started. And, I was really upset. My husband's like, it's just the first month. Like, you don't need to freak out. But for me, it was like, I was ready to have a baby yesterday, So, it was hard. And we kept trying. I kept doing the OPKs. So ovulation predictor kits, the BBT. So the basal body temperature, did that every month, had a chart. It's like, if anything is wrong, I can just bring this data to the doctor and show it to them,
Very scientific of you, right? You're keeping track and keeping charts. Yep. That's smart. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It was a little bit obsessive. I do suffer from OCD. So it was, the infertility definitely played into that or fed that, I should say. But basically, that whole summer we tried.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 28.
Okay. So very young in terms, all things considered.
Yeah. Very young. I was healthy. I exercised. I ate well. I took the vitamins that I needed to take. I cut down on drinking. I did the whole thing. And I thought I was good to go. And I just had this sinking feeling in my gut. Like it was just, I don't know how to describe it. It was just, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Okay.
And so that fall, we hadn't even been trying for a year, and I knew that they wouldn't see us, if we hadn't been trying for years. So of course we made an appointment and we just said we had, which I recommend to anyone. Trust your gut, your gut. And
agreed. You don't have to wait a year. They don't know that.
To wait a year. They don't know it. And if you feel like something is wrong, go for it.
Yes. Good advice.
But yeah, so basically we went into the doctors, and my husband, he had to give his sample.
Yep.
And we actually had to wait until the end of the year to do my testing. We were due to insurance purposes. So female hormone tests are a lot more expensive than the male. So we got his results back, and they basically just sent us the report with no explanation and said, you have below normal sperm. And that was it. We're like, okay, what do we do?
Right.
So
are you researching and stuff? I'm sure you're going online and trying to figure it all out, right?
Of course. Yeah. I went online. I typed in all the numbers and everything, and made sure I'm like, okay, this is normal, but this isn't. And okay, just so I had something to go in and talk to the doctor about. And we go in, and the doctor is like, yeah, it's not that bad, but you guys could do IVF or IUI if you want. And he was just trying to upsell us.
Yeah. And it sounds like he's being pretty casual and flippant about it, right?
He was. Yeah.
That's kind of a big deal, doc.
He was very casual about it. And when we did my testing, it was January, and they got my results back, and they're like, okay, you kind of have diminished ovarian reserve, but we're not going to put a diagnosis on it yet. They tested my AMH, and my AMH was low, and my FSH was high. So I don't remember exactly the numbers, but it was like I was 38. So I had, aged 10 years or something.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so what's the next step? And she's like, well, IUI is only about 11% success rate, where IVF is about 60. I'm like, well, of course I'm going to go with IVF, and we were lucky enough to have our insurance cover some of it.
Okay.
So,
and it's cool that they let you skip the IUI part. Some people don't. Some insurance, you have to do 3 IUIs or 5 IUIs or something.
Yeah. Our insurance.
And nothing against IUIs. Sometimes they do work, and it's wonderful when they do. But yeah, for a lot of people, they don't. So to have to be doing those while you're feeling like the clock is just ticking.
Oh, absolutely.
Frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I was talking to my husband. I'm like, listen, these are the statistics. I don't want to waste time. I want a baby yesterday. So let's just dive into IVF. And he's like, whatever, let's do it. So
was this affecting you guys relationship wise yet at all? Okay.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. We were, trying to conceive, on our own. Definitely became a chore. I was definitely a lot more intense about it. I'm like, okay, I'm ovulating this day. We have to have sex on these days. And, it's just the same old song and dance that every infertility couple goes through. Every trying to conceive couple goes through. We're put our legs up in the air after sex.
Right. Do all the things.
Do all the things.
Takes all the sexiness out of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it definitely started to affect our relationship in that way. We hadn't gotten to the stage we would get to after a few rounds of IVF.
Okay.
Mental
right. In
issues.
Terms of going downhill, you mean? Like
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not getting super bad yet, but it gets worse.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
So, we've always been a very strong couple, and we call ourselves Team Bailey because we're ridiculous.
I love that.
But my husband and I are best friends. Like we're on the same page. And so this was a really good test for us.
Yeah.
But anyways, so January, I got tested on CD. So cycle day 2 and cycle day 3, they're like, okay, if you want to start this month, you can. And I'm like, oh shit. All right, let's do this. Let's get in. Let's do this. I want to do IVF. I want to get an egg retrieval. It's going to be easy. I'm going to have a transfer and we're going to get pregnant.
And this is 2019 at this point?
Yes. January 2019.
Got it.
And so, and so I started the birth control, did the normal protocol birth control. And then we would add stims 5 days later. And then it was a very short protocol because she wanted to fit it in on that cycle for me. And I went in for my first check and I had a huge cyst on my ovary. And she said, we have to cancel it. And of course I was like, are you serious? Like I just spent like so much money on all these meds.
You've done all the stims already.
Yeah. I had started the stims and like,
so frustrating.
Yeah. And so she's like, well, yeah, we can't continue this because your ovary will like explode or something. It was like so painful. And at that point I could feel it and I knew something was off, but she offered me to do the trigger shot to kind of get things cleared out and the next cycle starting. So I did the trigger shot and then we went on a trip to a wedding down in San Francisco. And I remember being on that plane and I think my ovary like released the egg or the cyst or whatever on the plane because I was in the most exceptional pain.
Oh no.
It was so bad. I was throwing up.
Oh no.
It was so bad. And I was like, I don't think this is right.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was horrible. And, we were bummed. And this was like our first taste of
disappointment,
the shittiness of IVF.
Yeah,
really.
Completely.
So fast forward to February, I started a new cycle and they decided, okay, we'll do a long protocol with Lupron. And Lupron essentially makes your body go into menopause and it suppresses all the hormones. So no cysts. It was safer for me. So we did a long protocol. I was on that for a month. And around March on my birthday, we went in for the suppression check to make sure all was good and everything was great. No cysts. We were very happy. We were very ready to go. And they're like, okay, you can start stims today. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my birthday. Best birthday present ever. We're going to have an egg retrieval. And we had so much hope,
Yeah.
We're so excited still. And like, all right, this is it. We're going to get all the eggs, all the embryos. We're going to get good embryos. We're going to have so many embryos. And I just remember like doing all the stims and my husband was off in Europe. And during the middle of that cycle, my grandpa, who is my everything, he passed away. He fell very ill. Yeah. And I held his hand as he passed away in the hospital. It was to be on hormones. And anyone who's been on stims listening to this knows.
Yeah.
They fuck with your brain.
Yes.
You are so hormonal and you want to cry all the time. It was just, oh my God. And my husband was gone in Europe for a business trip and I was all alone. And oh my God. So I actually did the trigger shot in the hospital in the bathroom of my grandpa's suite.
Oh, wow.
And which is like, talk about weird timing, right?
Yes, completely.
But still, I was like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe this is like a sign, my grandpa's passing away, but we're trying to create new life. Like maybe this will lead to something better and bigger and, we'll have a positive outcome.
Right.
So everything went great. I had about 11 follicles. I've never had a lot of follicles on my scans due to my low egg reserve, but, we were hopeful anyway. We're like, okay, we just need one. And we went in for the retrieval. They put me under, did the whole thing, got back out. they said, we got 12 eggs. Like, okay, that's awesome. 12 chances.
Right.
And so due to my husband's sperm, they did ICSI, which is where they inject the sperm into the egg. And I basically, we're just walking on eggshells, just waiting at the edge of our seat, trying to, every day the embryologist would call and say what numbers would, like the numbers of the eggs and the embryos. So the first day, they're like, okay, all 10 fertilized or 10 out of 12 fertilized. And then they got back to us 3 days later. They're like, okay, 7 out of the 10 made it to day 3. And then on day 5, 5 out of 10. And we're like, oh my God, that's so great. So we decided to do PGS testing because with my scientific brain, I just wanted all the information possible.
Yeah, that's how I was too. I'm like, I want all the tests.
Same.
Not taking any chances here.
No. And, I was like, especially since I have shit eggs, like, I just want to make sure that we have good embryos. So we waited the 2 weeks and they came back and 2 were normal. We had 2 abnormal and then we had 1 wild card. And that wild card was, it was a weird one. The test results said no DNA, but then I talked to the doctor and they're like, yeah, it was probably just a bad biopsy. And we're like, okay, we'll just keep it just in case. Because that can happen. They can, they can biopsy a part of the embryo and not get all the DNA that they need to run the tests.
Right. So, or they can biopsy a part. I mean, you can explain this better than me, I'm sure, but one part can be different from another part, right? So it's not a foolproof test. It kind of depends where they pull from
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important for those of you listening to talk to your embryologist team and just kind of research and do your background research on, because the embryologist is really I would say the biggest factor. You want to go where a good lab is. Good doctor is important, but a good lab is, in my opinion, even more important.
Did you decide on a lab or was it the one that your doctor was affiliated with? Or?
I guess I skipped over this, but yeah, the place that we went to, I honestly was like, they have a nice website and I had no idea what I was looking at right at the very beginning. And the doctor got good reviews and they seemed cheaper than the other places in the area. And I was like, let's just go with them. They're cheaper. We want to save money, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't actually look into the lab at the time. I didn't know to look into the lab.
Right. I didn't either. I was just like, what do I do? All right. Sign here.
Exactly.
Spend the money there. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, we should note, like, people do have choices, and you don't have to necessarily do exactly what they say. So
absolutely.
That's a good little bit, a takeaway for anyone listening.
Yeah. And same with PGS testing. If you don't feel comfortable with it, like I said, it's not 100% test, right? So if you want it and you can afford it, because it is expensive, go for it. But if you can't, then, more power to you.
Right.
But
I remember Vince, my husband, was like, another $5,000?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, we've come this far and we're only doing 1 round. So let's do it.
What's another 5,000?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Just add it to the tab.
Right.
So we were so excited. We were like, okay, we have a boy and a girl embryo. We were so excited. We're like, oh my God, these are 2 children. We're so excited. And we started the transfer protocol in early April, and mid-May is when the transfer date was set. So that day, transfer day came. I went to the gym. I was working out pretty much every other day during the week. And I was like, I need to get one last workout in. And I remember being at the gym and getting the call from the embryologist. And he said, I'm so sorry. Your 2 embryos died during thaw.
Oh my God. I was like closing my eyes because I knew what you were going to say. I know this part of your story. And oh my God, Amber. What did that phone call feel like?
It was horrible. I mean, I was at the gym, first of all. So I was like crying in the middle of a gym and I had to run out. And I was like, are you sure? Like how did they die? And they're like, we're not sure. Sometimes they just do. And I'm like, but they were normal. Like something must've went wrong. And they're like, no, they just didn't make it. But your wild card embryo, that made it through thaw. So we're going to transfer that today. So I had this weird balance of grieving for our son and daughter that we had pictured in the future, and also trying to get excited for this transfer and not like put that bad energy, into the transfer.
Talk about a mind fuck.
It was totally a mind fuck. And my husband, still to this day, he says that was the hardest day of all of our journey.
Oh.
And I think it was so hard because it was our first letdown.
Yeah.
We had no idea this could happen. We had no idea that these PGS tested embryos could die. We just thought it was a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out, and this did not make us feel better when the doctor said this, each embryo has over a 98% chance of thawing and surviving thaw when they're PGS normal.
Whoa.
And I'm like, great.
Cool.
So
we're in the 2% that, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Cool. Awesome. So we went into the transfer, and we were really bummed because we had to have the talk with the embryologist right before. And then like, okay, it's time for your transfer. And we're like, whatever. All right. So we went in and did it. And it was just, that day, I'll never forget how just upset and also happy I was.
Right.
Like we just said, it was such a mind fuck.
Yes. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that the loss of embryos is a real loss.
It really is. We've worked so hard.
People don't give it the weight that I think it needs sometimes. And like the grief that you must have felt from that is real.
You're so right. I felt the same amount of grief of losing those embryos as I did with my future miscarriages.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same feeling. And like I said, maybe even worse because it was the first time we had realized, okay, this is not going to be easy for us.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what happened with the transfer?
So I, of course, tested early.
Okay. How early?
I don't remember. I think it was like 5 days past or something. Okay. And I saw a faint line and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And it got a little darker. And then it started getting lighter. And, I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just a test. Like these dyes aren't trustworthy on the test. Like I shouldn't go off of that. And I remember going into my beta day and getting my blood drawn and just being bummed. And I just had this feeling it hadn't worked. And it turns out I had a chemical pregnancy, which I hate that term.
Yeah, me too.
Just it
dehumanizes
needs to go
away. Yeah, it's completely.
Absolutely. And like, we were just so upset. We're like, okay, well, we have nothing. We have no embryos to transfer. We have our last embryo just is gone and we have to start all over again.
Yeah. Ugh.
And so
hard.
It really was. It was so hard. Yeah. And we had our what the fuck appointment. Yeah. Which I love that term, by the way.
I know, me too.
We had that about 2 weeks later and we're like, what happened? Like, was it your lab? Like, how did these embryos die? And like, they just never really gave us a good answer. They just said it sometimes happens. And I'm like, okay, but like statistically 98% chance of one embryo and then the second embryo. I mean, I'm not great at math, but that's like over a 98% chance for both of them.
Right.
Right. And so it was just
like somebody fucked something up, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, we'll never know. Right. But that's, I guess what I tell myself to get through this whole journey, but
so sorry.
Yeah. So June, we started the suppression cycle for gearing up for another retrieval. We just decided to jump right in with no break, which I do not recommend. Take time, mourn, grieve, do whatever you need to do to heal and then move on.
It's so tricky though, because you don't want to lose that time. So it's
exactly.
Like you need to take the time to heal and you should, and give, self-care and all that stuff. But it's also like clock is ticking. And like the more months that go by, the more frustrating it is. And, obviously as you get older, it's harder. And, it's such a strange place to be. And I feel for anybody going through that right now, or, you went through it, I went through it. It's so tricky.
It is. And especially when you have diminished ovarian reserve, right? Like you're like, shit, my eggs are only getting crappier by the minute.
Right.
Their quality is going downhill. So we got to get on this.
Was this around the time? Cause I remember we followed each other on Instagram and you were on stories. Was this when you took your break from
the
grant?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, that was later on.
Okay.
But it was when I first started the journey. And,
you did? Okay.
And, sharing with the Instagram community, because it just helped me so much to listen to your podcast and follow other people. And I remember you were always posting from your car. Yes.
You were always in the car.
Yeah. Always in the car, because our lab, our clinic was like so far away. So gosh. Anyways, so we got our meds, we started the stims, we did everything, and we had a retrieval in July, and we had the same amount of eggs this time. So we had 12 eggs, 10 were fertilized, and 5 made it to blastocyst stage. So this time I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I want to do a fresh transfer, even though the doctor said, no, you shouldn't. I just felt like it was the right thing to do. So I told him, we're doing a fresh transfer. Pick the best
embryo.
Nervous
about the thawing again?
Yeah, I was so nervous about the thawing. I mean, that left a huge impact on my brain. And so we did the fresh transfer, and they froze the other 4. And on day, let's see, it would have been 2 weeks after, let's see. So we got the transfer, we did 2-week wait. In that 2-week wait, we got the results for our embryos. 1 made it. And that's our lucky one. And the embryo that we had done the transfer with, I tested, of course. And once again, saw the line. And I'm like, oh my God, this is stronger than the last time. We're more hopeful. We were so excited. And we got the call on beta day, and it was like, congratulations, you're pregnant. And
best
like, oh my God, best news ever. And like your HCG was 69. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of low from what I
What did they say that it's supposed to be on beta day? Like, what do they want it to be?
They said anything between 50 and 100. Okay. So I'm like, okay, it's within their normal range, but still, I had been researching, of course, beta numbers, and I'm like, oh, this is so low. And not to say that, low HCG levels don't go on to make great babies and healthy babies and whatnot, but it's, I just wasn't as optimistic. And I remember it was right by our anniversary. The day after we got the call, my husband had a seizure.
Oh my God.
I know. He had a seizure. No, we don't know. We don't know. He all of a sudden developed a seizure disorder. So it was really random, really scary. I just remember being so scared in the ER with him. And I was just trying to reassure him. I'm like, don't worry, babe, we're pregnant. Like, just trying to cheer him up and just being so excited. And I remember him telling the nurse, like, oh yeah, my wife's pregnant. Like, we're so excited, and in his delirium. And, we went in the next day and we got our beta drawn again. Actually, it was 2 days later. And I remember that was the day we still went on our anniversary. Like, he just had a seizure, and we went on this freaking trip over the mountains to this Bavarian town called Leavenworth. And if anyone's in Washington, they know Leavenworth. It's awesome. Lots of great beer and everything there. And we got our blood drawn, and we were headed over the mountains. And I just remember, I'm like, okay, so the last time they called me, like, right away with happy news. Yeah. And the hours ticked by. We got into our Airbnb. We were just waiting. I was just checking my phone, checking my portal to see the uploaded results.
Such torture.
Oh my God. And I just remember walking around. I'm like, am I pregnant? Am I not? Am I pregnant? Am I not? And finally at like 3:00, I'm like, fuck this. They have not called me. I'm going to call them. So I called them, and they're like, the nurse answered, and she said, oh, like, we need to talk to the doctor first. We'll get back to you.
Oh my God.
Like, oh God.
Heart sinking.
Yes. I'm like, this is not going to be good results. The nurse called. She said, your HCG is at 97. So it did rise, but it didn't double like we'd want. She didn't sound optimistic. I was not optimistic. Basically, we hung up the phone, and then we sat on a sidewalk and just cried together in the middle of this like town with tons of tourists walking by.
Right. Oh.
And it was just such a bummer. And I just, ruined our anniversary weekend. And I wish we would have just stayed home, to be honest. Right. But, it was I don't know. We just needed to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And
that's another thing too. That makes this whole thing so hard for so many people. It's just like, you want life to go on as normal as much as you can, because you don't want to just be laser focused on this one thing. So you want to go on these trips and you want to celebrate this stuff, but then infertility is always getting in the way and like fucking it all up and ruining these occasions. And, you know,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, you couldn't have said it better. It's just, yeah, it completely takes over your life. 100%. So Monday I go back in, I get my third beta drawn, and I go to work, and I get the call that the number had dropped to, I think it was like 30 or something like that. So again, I was having a miscarriage, and I just remember running out of my work, bawling. And luckily my work had known, like my boss and pretty much everyone at my work is a close-knit type family. And we all support each other, and they've been so supportive of this journey for me, which is, I'm so lucky to have that.
That's great. Yeah.
So they're like, take as much time as you need, whatever. Like you can take your bereavement days and then take, you know, sick time. So I took the whole week off, and yeah, it was just another letdown. We couldn't.
Did you have to take anything for the miscarriage to progress, or did it pass naturally? Okay.
Yeah. Luckily it passed naturally. It was still painful, but it was, we were lucky that I didn't have to take any meds for it. So, and I hate having to go back in until your blood draw is
right. They want to get it back down to zero. Yeah. That's really rough.
Especially when the phlebotomist takes your blood and sees that it's for HCG, and they think that, oh, it's because you're pregnant. Like, this is your fourth one. Like, so exciting. And I'm like, no, it's because I'm having a miscarriage. And then they automatically are.
Right. You're like, couldn't that be on the file somewhere? Right? So like they know that going in. Yeah. I've had other people say that too, that they're like, oh, congratulations. And they're like, no, I'm fucking having a miscarriage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's terrible. And so we had another what the fuck appointment. And Andrew and I mean, we were just despondent. We were so tired and worn down, and like this had really affected our relationship and our sex life and everything, you know. We were still strong and a team, and we knew obviously we were going to make it and everything would be fine, but it definitely tested our relationship.
Yeah. And what was like one of the lowest moments, would you say?
I would say it's coming up.
Okay.
Coming up.
Let's take a quick pause for an ad break, guys. I'm here to talk about a new podcast I discovered called the All Inclusive Podcast. If you know me and you follow me on Instagram, you might remember that my word for 2021 was inclusion. So when I heard about the All Inclusive Podcast, I had to give it a listen. It's hosted by a guy named Jay Rudderman, who interviews leaders and experts on the latest news, technology, and advocacy for social justice. He believes that inclusion and understanding of all people is essential to a fair and flourishing community, and that in order to make progress that will lead to an innovative future, honest discussions must be held. And that is what All Inclusive is about. To that end, Jay has interviewed people like rising political star Michelle Wu, filmmakers Peter and Bobby Farrelly, author and political scientist Norman Ornstein, Paralympic medalist Jessica Long, and so many more. There's been some really interesting conversations on a huge variety of topics. It's all inclusive because everyone is welcome. So give it a listen, guys, and you can subscribe also to the All Inclusive Podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are available. You can also visit the show website for more information and full episode transcripts at www.allinclusivepodcast.com. I really like what you're doing, Jay Rudderman. Check it out, guys. And together, let's all make this world a better, more inclusive place.
So we had the what the fuck appointment, and the doctor, the asshole doctor, said, yeah, so you have like a 90% chance of getting pregnant this next round. I'm like, where the fuck are you getting these statistics? First of all. Second of all, like, don't tell me that after all these losses, you know, like I'm just so, like,
did he mean with the one embryo you had left, or naturally, or what did he mean?
We were going to do another retrieval. He said, most couples go through 3 egg retrievals and they get pregnant. That's just the statistics. And so I know he's trying to cheer us up, but I really don't appreciate it when doctors are not straightforward. And sure, that may be the statistic, but clearly we've fallen into the minority, right? With our embryos and everything else. So we did have the one embryo on ice, but we decided to keep it on ice and go with another retrieval to try and bank some eggs or embryos. And this time we decided to try Omnitrope. And Omnitrope is a human growth hormone, and it's supposed to be good for diminished ovarian reserve. It's not FDA approved for that. So insurance won't cover it. It's very expensive. For like 3 vials, it was like $1,800. Wow. And you go through it really quick. And we're like, you know what? If it helps, fuck it. Let's just do it.
Was this something that you had researched and recommended, or did your doctor bring it up, or how did that come into the mix?
He recommended it. Okay. I researched it. And after he had talked about it, and I said, you know what? There's like 50-50 data on it. So I'll just go for it. Why not? Worst decision, because for me, and this is not for everyone, but for me, we started our stims, and then I think it was like day 4 or 5, they added the Omnitrope. I started taking that, and my eggs grew way too quickly. Okay. So my follicles just grew way too fast, and they ended up doing the retrieval like 4 or 5 days early. Wow. Which is really early.
Because they didn't want like the overstimulation, like something could go wrong, right?
Yeah. And they didn't want to overly like mature the eggs, the follicles. So they were already to the size that they wanted. And we're like, well, it's 5 days early. Let's just do the retrieval. And so went under again for the 3rd back-to-back oh my God. Retrieval, and came out of anesthesia, and they're like, we got 10 eggs. I'm like, okay. And they said 9 are mature, 7 fertilized. So we had lower numbers this time. And I 100% believe it was because of the Omnitrope. I mean, they just grew my eggs way too quickly. And by day 5, only 2 embryos were like, they graded them like, it was like a 3 out of 5 or something. So they weren't hatching. They weren't early. They were like barely blastocyst at day 5. And he's like, at this point, I think we should just transfer both. And we're like, okay, great. So we have nothing to freeze, did this entire cycle for nothing. We were just so bummed. We weren't hopeful. It was just so tough. So we go into the transfer day, and
obviously with a fresh transfer, you can't test, right?
Exactly. So we had no idea what we were going into. And we're like, well, it's like, we're putting in 2, so maybe 1 will work. So we go in, we do the transfer, and sure enough, same thing happens. I test early, got the lines, did the whole song and dance over again, went to the beta. It was elevated, and then it went back down, and we had another miscarriage. And it was just at this point, I broke. Yeah. I remember laying in my bed and thinking to myself, I wish I could just disappear. Those were my exact thoughts. And it was so scary to me as a person who had always been happy, and sure, I suffered with OCD and anxiety, but I never dealt with depression before. I didn't know what it looked like. And I wanted to leave, like somehow. Yeah.
Would
just escape.
Would you say it was like suicidal even?
Yeah.
Or is that,
I say yes. I say it was on the verge of that. I had contemplated that, but I decided, you know what? I need help. Yeah. I absolutely need help. Yeah. So I talked.
Was it like you weren't wanting to get out of bed? Like, what was like the day to day?
Day to day was just, I was just crying all the time. Just so like, I didn't want to do anything. I was so into hiking with my dogs and exercising every day. And I just was in bed and would go to bed early and, go to work and get the things I needed to do done, and then just go home and sleep. It was horrible. And my husband,
I'm glad that you're talking about this though, because I bet there's people listening who, might be feeling that same way, and maybe this will help someone or encourage somebody to get help or talk to someone and know that they're not alone. Like, this is a real side effect of infertility is deep depression.
Deep depression. I had never felt this before. And I saw a therapist. I made an appointment, and my therapist is wonderful. If anyone is listening, you should, if you can, find a therapist who specializes in infertility, please do, because they can understand you on a whole different level, on a deep level. And my therapist had gone through 9 rounds of IVF, had 4 miscarriages. One of them was a stillbirth, which was really horrible.
Yeah.
And I felt this instant connection with her.
Yeah. How did you find her?
I just researched on Google.
Okay.
And
so was it local or was it like now you can? Okay. Because this is pre-pandemic still, right?
Pre-pandemic. Yeah. It was 2019. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think now with
October.
Zoom and stuff, it might even be easier for people to find therapists because you don't have to be in the same city as them even anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I found Susie, my therapist, on Google and saw her, and I just clicked instantly, which is so important. That's another thing. It's really hard to find a good therapist and click with them. And she helped me through a lot. She got me on meds. So I started taking Prozac, started feeling a little bit more like myself, decided, okay, we need to just take a step back from this and like chill. We need to work on our relationship. We need to work on our own mental health and, not just go through the motions of this. And at this point, we had completely run out of any insurance coverage whatsoever.
Right. Had you ever been on Prozac before?
No, never.
And how long did it take to like kick in?
About 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started feeling better around 4 weeks, and I didn't have the side effects that some people do. Some people have like headaches and gastrointestinal issues and other things like that while they're cycling on, but usually that resolves itself. So I'm hoping people, friends that might try it will continue on with it, but I was on the lowest dose possible just to kind of help.
Right.
And in addition to the depression I was suffering from OCD, and it's hair pulling. So,
okay.
So it's this weird
what
thing.
is that called?
It's trichotillomania. There it is. Yeah.
Yep.
And it is, I've always dealt with it since I was a kid, and it's a self-soothing thing.
Yep.
And it's very common actually, and not a lot of people talk about it. And I had been pulling out my hair like crazy just to kind of like soothe myself, really, to just get my brain to be calm.
Right.
And that was starting to affect obviously my hair.
Yeah.
And
had you ever
had about it?
I'm sorry. Had you ever had treatment for the OCD?
No, I never even thought it was an issue. I just thought I was type A, and I just thought I was very go-getter, totally fine. And trichotillomania is a subset of OCD. So they're very much related.
Can you explain like what goes on in your brain? Like, do you feel with the hair pulling? Like, is it like you feel like you have to do that to make yourself feel better? Or like, what's the thought process?
So it's actually more subconscious for me. It's like, I'll be working and I'll just be like thinking about something and just start pulling my hair, or I will be watching TV and bored and I'll start pulling my hair. Anytime I'm really nervous, I'll just start pulling my hair, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. That's how long I've done it since I was a baby.
Okay.
And so many people go through this, and it's so underdiagnosed, and going through the trauma of infertility just brought it all back out. Like I had been very good in the recent years because I was so happy, and, we were just honeymoon phase and the whole thing, as husband and wife, and infertility just brought this out full force. It was horrible.
It is horrible. It's so interesting that they can affect each other like that too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so it was something that I was very embarrassed about, but the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. And my husband encouraged me to get help. I got into therapy. We both did couples therapy, which was so helpful. Oh, that's good.
God. Was he willing to go? Did you have to?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. He was willing to go, and he was happy to go.
Team Bailey getting it done.
He would do anything to support me. And that is, I'm just so lucky in that regard. So
that's awesome.
And he wanted, he has PTSD, and he's, right now starting to search for a therapist for his own PTSD
from the infertility, or
from the infertility journey. Yeah, wow. Absolutely. And so it can affect men too. And it was a really rough time, but therapy really helped us, and we did the work, and we got to a really good place. I kind of chilled on the trying to conceive front a little bit. You know, we were still trying, but I wasn't obsessive about it. I was taking vitamins and whatnot, but not completely obsessive. And my OCD, my anxiety, and my depression, everything had kind of gotten under control starting in 2020. And then the pandemic hit and we were right about to start with a new clinic. And the reason why we went to a new clinic, I forgot to mention earlier, we went to our last what the fuck appointment, and my husband couldn't come because he was on a business trip. And I went into the office asking, where do we go from here? We've done 3 egg retrievals. Like, is there any more testing? Should my husband actually go to a urologist? You guys have never officially diagnosed him with male factor infertility. And they never actually officially diagnosed me with diminished ovarian reserve either. And he said, you know, it's not just a male issue here. It's also your eggs are not great. And to me, that comment just came off so sexist. First of all, it was like he was offended that I was saying that my husband's sperm wasn't great.
Right.
And I'm like, no. I realize it's a team thing, but it's, you know, like, should we like look deeper into these things? And he just refused to give my husband a referral to a urologist.
Weird.
And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
So,
bye.
Absolutely.
That's when you kick your doctor to the curb and like find someone else that's going to take you seriously and work on your team with you.
Yeah. I mean, we looked around on the internet and we came across P&W Fertility. I follow Dr. Laura Shaheen on Me Too.
We love you, Dr. Shaheen. She was at Fertility Rally Live in October. She is awesome.
Yes. Yeah. She is amazing. And I knew I wanted to go to her clinic because first of all, they're all women there, which I asked them and they're like, it just kind of happened. You know, we only pick the best and everyone is a woman here. I'm like, okay.
Awesome.
Even the embryologist, which is amazing. And I reached out to them, set up a appointment. I tried to get in with Dr. Shaheen, but because she's Instagram famous now, she's very much in high demand. So I actually got in with Dr. Marshall, and she is the founder of P&W Fertility, and she is amazing, just total badass. Love her. I had a consultation with her. We did it via Zoom because, of course, pandemic, and she looked at my old numbers and I'd gone in and done a new testing and my AMH had gone, I don't know where it started. I think it was in the 2s down to 0.67, my AMH. Yeah. And so normal range is like higher than that. I don't exactly remember the normal range, but it's like 2.5 and higher. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. So my egg reserve has really dropped in the past year and a half. And my FSH was at 11.8. And on the chart, she showed me the chart. I fell somewhere in between like a 43 and 46-year-old for eggs.
Wow. And how old were you at that point?
30.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a shock to me, but also relieving because it was like
a diagnosis.
I had a diagnosis and it was so nice to have a diagnosis. And she gave us a referral to a urologist for my husband immediately. She's like, oh yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. And she's like, you know, at this stage, I think we should do an ERA and we should do an HSG test. And that is a saline test where they basically put saline into your uterus and they take an ultrasound and they look around for polyps and any other stuff. And we had a plan. And I'm like, why the hell did our other doctor never suggest this to us? I'd asked him if there was other testing. And I even asked him about an ERA cycle. And he said, no, like, we don't need to do that.
Wow. So glad you switched.
Oh my God, me too. And so we did the ERA, and the ERA was great. Actually, we came back with an answer. We needed 12 more hours of progesterone. So that was great. And this was in around May, June of 2020. And they did the sonohystogram and found a lot of polyps in my uterus. And so that was shocking. I didn't expect that, you know? And so I was scheduled for surgery in July of 2020. And I asked them to take a picture, which, by the way, you can do that. If you go under and they're putting a camera up anywhere, you can ask them to take a before and after photo.
Pro tip, guys, ask for photos. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. So I remember getting out of anesthesia and Dr. Marshall walked in and she's like, you had a mountain range of polyps. I stopped counting at 20.
Oh my God.
And I swear to God, one of the polyps in the photo looks like the Matterhorn. I still have that photo, but yeah, anyways. And she's like, you probably have had it for a long time because like these don't grow that fast, like this many overnight. And sure, IVF probably didn't help it, but you've probably had them for a while. And have you had heavier periods, painful periods? I'm like, actually, yeah. Like since about 2017, I've had heavier, more painful periods. She's like, well, that's usually a sign because before I had very light periods and I just thought, I'm hormonally changing or whatever. And
right.
So that's another thing, pay attention to your body and
100%.
So yeah.
Sidebar. Do you know Jennifer J. Palumbo?
No.
She's, oh my gosh, she's the best. She's a comedian and an author. Yes. She's also speaking at Fertility Rally Live, but she had a polyp that she named Jackson Polyp.
I remember I listened to that episode. And she
started like a Twitter account for it and it had like all these followers.
What was funny was that episode came out right when I was going through that. And I do remember saying that. I was like, I'm going to name mine. And so I named mine Polly Polyp.
Right. There you go.
Oh my God. Except for I had a mountain range of them. So,
right.
But yeah, that was a great episode. So
and not to make light of it, obviously, but you sometimes you just got to laugh at this shit because it's so bizarre and it can get so dark.
It was so dark. And I was just like, at this point, I'm just rolling with it. Right.
Right.
And so I felt like I was in good hands. And during this whole time with the new clinic, I had to transfer my frozen embryo from my old clinic to my new clinic. And I had to take this giant cooler and it was about 40 pounds the cooler itself was very tiny, but like the container it was in was huge.
Right.
And we had to buckle it in.
Right. I remember you did show this on Instagram, didn't you? I remember this part of your story. Yeah.
Yes. Happily carrying our new embryo to its new home.
Were you nervous about that though?
Yes.
With
Absolutely. But I was also like, I didn't trust FedEx or whatever that they were going to use.
Right.
I'm like, I just want to do it myself and I know I'm going to drive safely. And so we both went to our old clinic and got our embryo and they were cool about it. And then just brought it to our new clinic and there it was. So it was actually a pretty simple process, but
that's
very nervous.
Cool. Like it's so cool that the technology these days, that's even a thing.
I know it was, they did say that there is a risk. So there is a risk for transferring it, with the temperature differences, but we were lucky. So, okay. So all polyps gone, had the ERA test, had everything ready to go. We were ready to start our transfer of this last embryo.
And you weren't going to do another retrieval?
No, we didn't have the funds to do it. And I was done. I was absolutely done.
Yeah.
And I think when Dr. Marshall said I had diminished ovarian reserve, I just was like, okay, egg donation. I'd already started planning for egg donation, embryo adoption. We looked at domestic adoption. We were just ready for plan B.
Right.
And I think that's so normal for infertility patients to go through is they have a plan B for everything because they're so used to everything not working out. Right. And so that's how it was for us. We're like, this probably isn't going to work.
Right.
What are the chances this last embryo is going to stick? And so I'd reached out to several adoption agencies, reached out to egg donation agencies and started that process actually in late July and August. And we were just so ready for the next step. Cause at this point I was like, okay, I've had my break and it did help, but I still have this this nagging feeling that I need to finish this somehow, whether it be through adoption or transfer working or whatever. I want a baby. And so August rolls around. We start our our cycle and everything's perfect. Do the Lupron, we did birth control, we did the Lupron. And September 9th was when we transferred our embryo. And I just remember being so excited finally. And I remember opening up on Fertility Rally about how nervous we were though. I mean, I remember bawling to you all and getting support from you all. And Noah was the one that gave me life advice, and he is just amazing.
Oh my God. I love him so much. You have to get his book if you haven't already.
Yes, I do. Yeah. I love him. So he helped me realize like, there's no harm in hoping, like you're going to be bummed no matter what. So you might as well be hopeful and positive, and instead of negative and anxious and scared. And that made so much sense. And it sounds so simple, but having him tell that to me, I was like, fuck. Yeah. All right.
I want to clarify that we're talking about Noah Shaw, and his book is called Stop Thinking Thoughts That Scare You. So guys, if you're listening, go check it out. He's amazing. And so we went out. My therapist was like, how about you go out and get like a miracle present? And she basically suggested us to go get a baby item. Your doctor said that?
No, my therapist.
Oh, your therapist.
Yeah, my therapist. And
that's such a good suggestion.
Yeah. And so we're like, okay, you know what? We're going to go to a nice bougie baby store and and get a baby toy. So Andrew picked out a koala puppet, and I picked out this cute little baby bunny, and we picked out a swaddle, and it just felt so good.
Yeah.
A faith present, just pick out a faith present. And I brought the bunny with me to the transfer. And Andrew couldn't be there because of COVID. So he was in the car. They gave me 2 Valium. Did you FaceTime with him? No, I didn't, but I was too high on Valium.
You said 2 Valium?
2 Valium. They gave me 2 Valium this time, which they're like, you're anxious, you need it. So take it. I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. So it went perfectly. Like the embryologist came out and was like, your embryo thawed beautifully. It's already hatching.
God. I know. I remember you had so much anxiety about the thaw, again, of course. So I remember when you got that good news, and I was so happy for you.
I was so happy. And I just remember we got the call in the morning actually. And I was at my acupuncturist. I was doing acupuncture at the time and before the transfer, and we did it directly after the transfer. And she's been with me on my journey this whole time too. And she's like, did the embryo thaw correctly? And I'm like, yes, it did. I'm so excited. And it was just like the best day ever. We had the transfer. My husband brought me Starbucks, like a decaf caramel frappuccino or whatever. And he's like, let's go celebrate. And so we were so excited. We ended up going back to Lopez Island where we got married to see his parents and just relax for a few days.
Good.
So we hung out. I started feeling some cramping. I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good. This is different. Right. And so started feeling a little bit more, I don't know, hopeful, I guess. And I decided not to test this time.
I was going to say, did you test on day 5?
No, it was so hard.
Yeah.
And my husband actually had to hide all the pregnancy tests in the house because I would like go around and just look for them. Cause I'm like, okay, where is he going to hide them? He's probably going to hide them here.
Right.
He somehow figured out how to hide them away from me. So
nice job, Andrew.
He did a great job. And I remember going in on beta day and feeling so hopeful. And they called me back 2 hours later and they said our beta was 193.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Holy shit.
Yes.
This is amazing.
Good number. Yeah.
Oh, it's a good, strong number. We were so happy. We cried. I cried for like, I don't know, half hour or something. My husband just held me. I was just so relieved. And he gave me a pregnancy test. I finally took it and it said the words pregnant. And that was like, I still have that test. It hasn't gone out of batteries yet. But seeing those words, just, it was undescribable. And we waited 2 days for the beta. I went in and they called me and they said, congrats, your beta is 1,589. I was like, holy shit, that's a huge jump.
Yeah.
And we were so excited. And around 5 weeks pregnant, I started spotting and I spiraled. I was like, oh my God, this is a miscarriage. I'm cramping. I'm having spotting. This is not good. But 5 weeks, it's still too early to see anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so they brought me in at 5 weeks, 6 days. And they were so nervous. I was sure they weren't going to see anything.
So scary.
Oh my God. And once again, Andrew couldn't come with me.
Yeah.
So I was going to these appointments by myself, and I'm sitting there and waiting for, them to find the egg sac, and they did. And they saw a heartbeat. And I was like, oh my God.
Best sound in the world.
The best sound in the world.
Yeah.
It was the best. And I couldn't believe it. And so they're like, you probably have a subchorionic hematoma, which is very common in IVF pregnancies.
Right. Why is it so common? Do you know?
I don't know, actually. It just says that it's common.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of our members who are now pregnant who have had a common thing like that. Yeah. And it's so scary.
It's so scary. And it's like so cruel. Like, why?
Right.
After all this loss, why do we have to have this one thing?
Right.
To remind us of miscarriages and loss and everything.
Yeah.
And I continued spotting, and I went in for another week. We saw the heartbeat. It was amazing. And then I think it was around 6.5 or 7 weeks or something like that, I had a heavy bleed where there was clots. And I remember just sitting on the toilet looking down. I'm like, is that my baby? And it was just horrible. And my husband's like, we'll take you to the ER. We're going to go to the ER. So we go to the ER, and we waited for a long time because the ultrasound technician was on call. And I was waiting in the room for probably 2.5 hours, and they finally arrived. I know. And we heard and saw the heartbeat. We're like, oh my God. And that's when we saw the pocket of blood in the actual uterus, in my uterus. Okay. And we're like, okay, so there is a reason for all this bleeding, and okay, we can move forward.
Yeah. Does the blood just like dissipate and go away after a while, or what?
For me, it didn't. It came back. It's supposed to just dissipate. So it would like, I would have a big bleed and then have some spotting. And then I had another big bleed like 2 weeks later, and went again to the ER. And this time I was in the waiting room, bleeding through my pads. They had to give me the postpartum maternity pads to have because it was just bleeding so much. And a woman in labor comes in, and I lost it.
Yeah.
I got up and just, oh my God, started bawling on the floor in front of everyone. And everyone was like, what the fuck is wrong with that girl? But my husband was just holding me, and we had to wait for like 3 hours. And we finally got in, and he was fine. Baby boy was fine. And it was just a incredible moment to see that. And luckily, I think that was around 9.5 weeks. That was like the last big bleed I had. It had passed finally. And, during the episode, I was so nervous. I actually collected one of the clots because I thought it was the baby. And I remember putting it in the bag and bringing it with me. And I'm like, okay, if this is it, I want them to test, baby, which is horrible and just such a dark moment.
Yeah, for sure.
But we were just so lucky that this little guy hung on.
Right. So, he did. He's a fighter. And so are you. My God.
And that was that. Like I stopped bleeding. I had some residual bleeding, and then it just dried up, and it was all good to go. And I made it to my second trimester, and that trauma of the first trimester really got to me. So I started therapy again, and I started getting anxious again, and we upped my Prozac, and that has been helping immensely. And with IVF, you want to make it to all these milestones, right? So it's like, first you make it to the second trimester. Okay, I can announce. Then you make it to the 20-week anatomy scan. Okay, made it past that. What's the next milestone?
Right.
Finally made it to viability at 24 weeks pregnant. And I was like, I can finally relax a little bit.
Was that the first time you were able to exhale?
Yes.
Really? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, now I'm 31 weeks pregnant, and I'm just enjoying every minute of it. I'm so incredibly thankful that I'm here.
You are. And this baby was so wanted, and it's going to be so awesome to tell him that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we're dealing with some trauma from IVF still that we're still working out with our therapist, but it's
5 years later for me, 5+, and it still isn't fully gone. That shit does not go away.
Every time you wipe, you think, is there blood?
Yeah. I still get like that sometimes.
Yeah. Every time.
Like I had my period recently and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not going through infertility right now because that would have triggered me.
Oh, absolutely.
It's I still get choked up even talking about it.
It really leaves an imprint on your soul, for sure. Really. And my therapist described it as it's the PTSD from infertility is akin to the PTSD from cancer. And
I've heard that,
that hit me hard because I'm like, okay, this is a real thing. It's okay to be upset and sad and depressed and go through the therapy and get on the meds and do whatever you need to do to,
of course,
to get yourself
find
better.
Your people, talk to people, if you're comfortable sharing your story, cool. If not, that's cool too. People need to do what is right for them.
Absolutely. And for me, it was talking about it helped. Right. And I made so many new friends, and Fertility Rally is such a good village, support community to have.
Well, it's like a true family. I mean, I really feel like you guys are all my sisters. Like we all have this common bond, and that will never, it's like impenetrable.
Absolutely.
It's like, and when we all finally get to meet in person, it's just going to be like old friends,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to Amber's story. And Amber, I love you, girl. I cannot wait to meet your little guy. Thank you for sharing this with all of us. Also, guys, if you don't mind taking a minute to go rate and review this podcast, it really helps us get more recognition and reach more people. And also, if you are looking for support or community, please check out fertilityrally.com. And we would love to have you join our family. We open up our membership the first week of every month. So you can always reach out to me on Instagram or DM if you have any questions about Fertility Rally. But we would love to be there for you. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening. And I will talk to you next time.
Kids need wholesome snacks to fuel their bodies and imaginations, like the delicious soft-bake organic Cliff Kid Z-Bar. With 10 grams of whole grains, it was made for active kids like mine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm on stopwatch duty for the backyard obstacle course. Grab a box of Cliff Kid Z-Bar snacks for playtime anytime.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. Save up to $1,200 on select Sleep Number 360 Smart Beds and adjustable bases, plus special financing, only for a limited time. Special financing subject to credit approval. Minimum monthly payments required. See store for details.